develop for central areas such as the Midlands, East Anglia too. So a bit of a murky start on Friday morning here, but it will be dry for these central areas. Elsewhere, though, across the south and the northeast, staying rather wet through tomorrow. Some quite blustery and heavy showers across the south coast and across the northeast, particularly eastern Scotland, where that warnings in force rainfall totals will continue to build up. Now, temperatures are a little bit below average for the time of year. With the best of any sunshine, it won't feel too bad in central areas. On Saturday, again, sunshine will be fairly limited for most areas, with a lot of cloud and showers around. In the southeast, we'll see some quite persistent rain, as well as in Northern Ireland, Wales and eastern Scotland. Through Sunday, further wet weather is to come, and there'll be little change into the start of next week, with more wind and rain.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, yet another parliamentary scandal. A Tory MP now arrested for rape and possession of drugs. I've got a simple question for you. Do you think MPs somehow think that they are above the law? what is going on. And in a major speech today, Rishi Sunak has described artificial intelligence as a threat to humanity. But don't worry, he's told us not to panic. What do you think to AI? Is it a force for good or not? And the government faces yet another headache in the form of a legal challenge this time against them over their use of an airbase to house migrants in Essex. Apparently, the decision segregates the migrants from the locals and thus leads to a loss of the migrants' dignity. Goodness me. And jobless parents will need to spend 30 hours a week soon looking for work if they want to keep their benefits. Harsh or fair? You tell me. Yes, we've got it all coming up tonight. We're going to have some lively debate on some of those topics right through to 7 o'clock. But before we get stuck in, let's cross to Polly Middlehurst for tonight's latest headlines.
Well, Michelle, thanks very much indeed. And good evening to you as well. The UK's border force is in Egypt, with the Prime Minister confirming today officers are there ready to help British nationals escape Gaza when the border reopens. Cabinet ministers held an emergency Cobra meeting this morning to address the escalating crisis in the Middle East. The government's pushing for a pause in fighting, rejecting calls for a full ceasefire to facilitate aid reaching Palestinians. And in Gaza, people are searching for bodies after another night of Israeli airstrikes. The health ministry in the Hamas-controlled territory saying the death toll has now passed 7,000. They say that includes almost 3,000 children since October the 7th. And Iran's foreign minister has weighed into the conflict today, claiming Hamas is ready to release hostages and the world should support the release of 6,000 Palestinian prisoners. And that development coming as the Arab nations released a joint statement condemning what they're describing as the forced displacement and collective punishment of Palestinians. Israel, for its part, maintains it's only targeting the terrorist group Hamas. But the Palestinian ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour, today criticised countries for failing to condemn Israel's response.
Why some feel so much pain for Israelis and so little pain for us, the Palestinians? What is the problem? Do we have the wrong faith? How can representatives of states explain how horrible it is that 1,000 Israelis were killed and not feel the same outrage when 1,000 Palestinians are now killed every day?
Well, also in the news today, in the United States, a manhunt is underway after 18 people were killed by a gunman and 13 more were left injured. Police in the state of Maine have named 40-year-old Robert Card as their person of interest, describing him as armed and dangerous. Local media is reporting that he's a trained firearms instructor, and the US Army has confirmed that he's in the US Army Reserves. The shootings happened at least 2 locations. One happened in a restaurant, the other at a bowling alley in the city of Lewiston. Businesses have been asked to close and people have been told to stay at home. Janet Mills is the governor of Maine. She described the community's pain at a news conference earlier on.
All Maine people are sharing in the sorrow of the families who lost loved ones last night. Loved ones, normal people who were killed or injured while unwinding from a day of work or while spending time with their family and friends, socializing. I know that the people of Lewiston are enduring immeasurable pain. I wish I could take that pain off your hearts, off your shoulders, but I promise you this, we will all help you carry that grief.
Now, the Prime Minister has warned that artificial intelligence could threaten human extinction on the same scale as global pandemics or nuclear war. His comments come after touring Moorfields Eye Hospital, which uses AI to diagnose sight problems. Speaking at the Royal Society in London, Rishi Sunak said humanity could lose control of AI and terrorist groups could use it to spread fear and destruction. He also announced the formation of the world's first AI Safety Institute in the UK to explore the risks and share with the world its data.
Get this wrong, and AI could make it easier to build chemical or biological weapons. Terrorist groups could use AI to spread fear and destruction on an even greater scale. Criminals could exploit AI for cyber attacks, disinformation, fraud, or even child sexual abuse. And in the most unlikely but extreme cases, there is even the risk that humanity could lose control of AI completely, through the kind of AI sometimes referred to as superintelligence.
Now, 2 medics have been arrested on suspicion of criminal damage after a Just Stop oil protest at London's Natural History Museum. In front of dozens of shocked tourists, activists sprayed what they said was orange corn flour over a reproduction dinosaur skeleton. They then displayed a banner which read, "For health's sake, just stop oil." The incident comes just 1 day after the group staged a similar protest at London's Grade 1 listed Wellington Arch, resulting in 3 arrests. Now, let me tell you about some breaking news we received over the last 15 minutes or so here at GB News. It was reported about 20 minutes ago that a prominent Conservative MP has been arrested over an allegation of rape. He has been quizzed by police yesterday. Well, interestingly, on Twitter, about 5 minutes ago, I can tell you that the MP in question, Crispin Blunt, has clarified that that is in fact himself. He says it was reported that an MP was arrested yesterday in connection with an allegation of rape. I am confirming that MP was me. The fact of the arrest requires a formal notification of the Speaker and then my Chief Whip. So that is the latest statement on Twitter from Crispin Blunt, following the news that an MP was arrested yesterday in connection with a rape allegation. We'll have full coverage for you with our political editor, Christopher Hope, who's on Michelle's programme next. You're with GB News across the UK, on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. This is Britain's news channel.
Thanks for that, Polly. Yes, I am Michelle Dewberry and I am with you till 7 o'clock tonight. You know, I know this is going to sound a bit odd because I do work in the media, but you know, whenever I hear and see Just Stop Oil referenced in the media, it makes me cringe. I honestly think the best thing we can do with these absolute pillocks is ignore them. Every time we reference them, we give them the oxygen of publicity and the cycle continues, doesn't it? What do you make to all of that? Get in touch, let me know. I am with you till 7, as I say, and alongside me, I've got the former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Neeson, and a new face to this show, but not to the channel, the former Labour advisor, Matt Laza. Good evening.
It's lovely
Welcome.
to be with you, Michelle.
Well, let's see whether or not you still think that by the end of the programme. Yeah, we'll ask.
Spoiler. No.
But anyway, also welcome to you, Dawn. I won't say my regular line. I've grown out of it now.
Yeah,
I've grown out of it.
Thank you, Michelle. Yeah.
You know the drill, don't you, on this show? It's not just about us three. It is very much about you guys at home. What's on your mind tonight? gbviews@gbnews.com is how you reach me on the email, or you can tweet me at GBNews. Let's start, though. We shall head off to our political editor to get the very latest on the latest ridiculous scandal to plague the Tory party. Christopher, good evening to you. Bring us up to speed, Christopher,
Hi, Michelle.
if
Evening.
you
How are
will.
you? Well, we are hearing tonight that Crispin Blunt, he's the MP for Reigate, has named himself as the man who was arrested yesterday morning by police in Surrey on suspicion of rape and possession of controlled substances. So before we reported this an hour ago, we couldn't name the MP, but now we can name him as Crispin Blunt. He's an MP for Reigate. He's held the seat since 1997, 18,310 majority, he's 63. He is standing down in the next election. Someone called Rebecca Paul is replacing him, but it's a further blow, I think, to the credibility and authority of the Tory party.
And let me just ask you this, Christopher, because is this an unusual step for an MP? So you get this arrest and, you know, often there's this, who is it, what's going on? The rumour mill kicks into action. So just to be clear, as I'm showing on the screen now, Crispin, as you just referenced yourself, he basically outed himself as being the person that this report related to. Is that typical? Does this normally happen? Is this quite unusual?
It's highly unusual. I mean, we as journalists have to be very careful not to go towards naming people arrested in relation to these serious charges. Since 2016, we haven't been able to name people in that because they're entitled to their privacy while they're investigated. And at the point of charging, we can sometimes name. It is worth reading out the statement which Christian Blunt has just released on Twitter moments ago. He says it's been reported that an MP was arrested yesterday in connection with an allegation of rape. I'm confirming that MP was me. The fact of the arrest requires a formal notification of the Speaker and then my Chief Whip. I've now been interviewed twice in connection with this incident, the first time 3 weeks ago when I initially reported my concern over extortion. The second time was earlier this morning, under caution, following arrest. The arrest was unnecessary, as I remain ready to cooperate fully with the investigation that I am confident will end without charge. He adds, Christian Blunt, I do not intend to say anything further on this matter until the police have completed their inquiries. So it's worth, again, the police investigation will go its own way and may or may not resolve itself before the election. But as we know, he's the MP for Reigate, 18,310 majority, MP since 1997, was standing down, age 63, has got a candidate to replace him. But we'll wait to see how that plays out in coming weeks.
Just to help bring my viewers up to speed, Christopher, so when this kind of thing happens, what automatically happens next? A suspension? What's the process politically that will be underway now?
Well, I've been in touch with the Whip's office tonight, and they have not said any action has been taken yet. We don't know yet whether Mr. Blunt, who of course is innocent, and there's no reason why he shouldn't be allowed to go to work, about his work in the House of Commons, whether he might find himself not going into the House of Commons and doing work, or may feel he can do. Again, this will play out in coming days in conjunction with Mr. Blunt and the Whip's office.
Yeah, thank you, Christopher, for bringing us up to speed with that one. I've got to say, right, Dawn, Rishi Sunak, right, he must literally want to headbutt the desk every day of his job, because it literally, I think it was only, was it 24 hours ago, give or take, that we heard about the suspension of Peter Byrne. We've had old Pincher Boy.
Chris Pincher, yeah.
We've had, it just seems to be absolutely relentless for the Tories.
It's not just the Tories, let's make it clear, this has happened across all political parties. I mean, I think the problem you've got here is politics, a lot of industries, but politics in particular, are full of very influential, powerful men, and many of the people that work for them and around them are young and keen to get on. As I said, this isn't just politics, this applies in many, many businesses as well. And I think there is also a lot of alcohol involved. I'm not talking about this case in particular, but there is also a lot of alcohol involved. I think there are more bars than creches in the House of Commons. You've probably been in most of them, so you can tell us, Matthew. But I think, any business brothers, rich, powerful men with a lot of influence, I think it's a dangerous mixture when you've got youngsters working around. I'm not talking about this case, by the way, but I'm not surprised it happens a lot in politics and we get to hear about it a lot because they are, at the end of the day, public servants.
Tell us then, do you think, obviously, because this is an ongoing investigation, I'm going to step away slightly from the Crispin situation and broaden it out to politics and Parliament more broadly. Do you think there is some kind of sleaze culture in Parliament? Because Dawn mentions, this goes on all over different workplaces, but specifically in Parliament, do you think it's worse in there or what?
So I think it heightens in Parliament because of the very peculiar nature of Parliament as a workplace, because, it's not a 9-to-5 workplace. Now, I know the hours have changed a lot. People are still there into the evenings at least once, twice a week when the House is sitting. And as Dawn says, the other difference is, unlike most workplaces, they're not full of bars. And as we've seen with other people, not necessarily sexual allegations, but the Labour MP who's now a recovering alcoholic who got himself into trouble for racist things that he said. So, because he'd had certainly at least one, if not several too many. I mean, I think the interesting thing about this is, you know, I'm a gay man, and, you know, when I first started going to the House of Commons and working in there 30 years ago, attitudes have totally changed. And, of course, one of the things that we're struck is, with yesterday's case with Peter Bone and others, is people who, you know, Crispin Blunt, to be fair, is an outgate. He came out and all of that, but attitudes have changed. But sometimes that takes a long way to feed through into politics and how people's behaviour
I don't know
changes.
what you mean. What point are you making?
No, so I mean, what I mean is that in the Tory party, a lot of people were in the closet. It was very, and Parliament.
But what's that got to do with sexual misconduct?
No. Well, what I think it does is it bred a culture where people were not open and were not open with themselves about what they did. So people did things that were wrong. And I think, you know, we've seen that in the Chris Pincher instance as well. People were doing things that they shouldn't be doing. And I think now, to answer your first question, Michelle, is that there's a much more open culture. Thank goodness we have a much higher percentage of women. 50% of Labour MPs are women, which does change the atmosphere of the place. Because let's remind ourselves, not a single one of these cases involves a woman.
You know, why? I mean, we debated this the other day, actually, because there was a report from one of the bodies, and it had said that in all the investigations it had done into misconduct related to Parliament and all the rest of it, that alcohol was a significant factor in loads of them. I do not understand for the life of me why we continue to have, and yes, I'm cross about the fact that it's subsidised, but let's just even move on from that. Why does there need to be a bar serving alcohol in Westminster?
Well, there doesn't, and there shouldn't.
Well, multiple, by the way, there's not just one.
Yeah, there is an awful lot.
Yeah.
And up until recently, I think there's about 1 or 2 creches as well. As you said, many more female MPs and one or two.
Do you think Rishi
creches.
Sunak should just shut them down?
I think, as Matthew's alluded to, though, I mean, the hours have got better, but they are very antisocial hours as well.
So what? What does that mean? Does that mean that because people here work late producing programmes here, that we don't have a pop-up bar for them here? Working late doesn't mean that your employer has to provide a bar within your office.
It doesn't. And when I used to edit a newspaper, we actually had a bar. We did have a bar in the building. By the way, the newspaper industry and the finance industry don't cover themselves in glory in this area either. But we used to have a bar in the building. You know what, Michelle? As editor, I would rather we had a bar in the building so I knew where my staff were rather than hunting around the local pubs to track them down.
Like the old days on Fleet Street.
Exactly that. So, look, look, in an ideal world, no, there is no need for a bar or any bars to be in the House of Parliament. But there are, and I think maybe less of them, but I think it is part of it, and I think it's fine.
Do you think they should stop serving alcohol in Westminster?
Yeah, I think certainly there needs to be a real change in the culture.
Yeah.
Whether you have 1 or 2 bars, you have visitors coming in, but the idea that people... what used to be a mark of success in Westminster was how clubbable you were. You know, if you didn't go round the bars, if you weren't seen to be, you know, effectively one of the lads, it stopped you getting on. You were seen as being a bit different and a bit funny, and you didn't help you get on in politics. That culture needs to change. So, yeah, a lot of those bars need to be shut.
Well, do you know what, Rishi Sunak, if you're watching this programme, I think take the hint now. These guys can't control themselves in the workplace when they're consuming alcohol, seemingly. Get them closed or keep them open and just remove the alcohol licence at the very least. Stop us lot, taxpayers, subsidising this ridiculous drinking culture that seems to be going on. What do you make to it all? GBviews at gbnews.com. After the break, speaking of Rishi Sunak, he has basically done a massive speech today where he says that artificial intelligence is essentially a threat to humanity. But, he says, don't be too scared. What do you make to it all? I'll see you in 2.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Rishi Sunak, he has been speaking out today about the dangers of artificial intelligence. Let's have a little listen to some of the things he had to say.
Get this wrong, and AI could make it easier to build chemical or biological weapons. Terrorist groups could use AI to spread fear and destruction on an even greater scale. Criminals could exploit AI for cyber attacks, disinformation, fraud, or even child sexual abuse. And in the most unlikely but extreme cases, there is even the risk that humanity could lose control of AI completely, through the kind of AI sometimes referred to as superintelligence.
I mean, after some of those warnings as well, I have to say that he goes, after talking about human extinction, etc., he goes, this is not a risk that people need to be losing sleep over right now. And I don't want to sound alarmist. I mean, as if we've not got enough to lose sleep over, quite frankly. Now we have to learn that actually AI is going to come along and wipe us all out. But don't worry about it. All is apparently going to be well. Now, I've actually got someone to join me down the line on this one, because I have to say, if I ask most people, or a lot of people, what is artificial intelligence, I suspect that a lot of people might not even know the answer to that. And why should you? Rohit Talwar, he is alongside us now. Good evening to you. Let me start with that question directly to you. Please, can you help my audience understand what is artificial intelligence?
Well, the idea, firstly, good evening. The idea is that we're trying to create software that mirrors the way humans think. And the ultimate goal is to get to something that's called artificial general intelligence, where we have systems that can do all the things that a human can in a cognitive way. So thinking, planning, reasoning, understanding language, all of those kinds of things. We're not there yet, but we're starting to see systems that are incredibly powerful and beginning to give us a taste of what AI might do in the longer term.
Yeah, I mean, we're hearing a taste from Rishi Sunak, helping terrorists, helping paedophiles, potentially wiping us off the face of the earth. Do you think that AI is a force for good or not?
It's both. So there are all the risks he talked about. When you've got software that's that powerful, I'm sure a lot of people here will have used ChatGPT or Bard or Bing and been amazed at just how clever they are. Even though they're not really thinking at all, they're just predicting what might be coming next in terms of the next word. But they're already incredibly powerful, so you're seeing them being used for immense good in healthcare, you're also seeing them pose the kind of risks that Rishi Sunak talked about. So it's both. The AI will help us dramatically improve people's healthcare because we'll be able to get better diagnoses faster. We'll be able to discover drugs that are more effective. We'll be able to get personalized education so our kids don't get left behind. But on the other hand, we run the risk of being surveilled, being monitored all the time. Everything you do, every transaction you make being analyzed, people weaponizing all sorts of devices, and all of the things he talked about. So right now we're at a very early stage, and there's a big argument about whether we should try and regulate this. The EU, I think, is doing the right thing in trying to regulate in advance of some of these developments. The UK is saying, let's wait. But we know what happens when you wait. You get the kind of mess we have now when we're trying to regulate social media and we're trying to regulate the internet. Whereas with AI, we at least have a very good sense of where it could go. So we could have quite good regulation quite quickly if we wanted to. And that might actually give Britain a competitive advantage.
Let me ask you a final question, a brief answer if you will. Do people need to worry about their jobs to artificial intelligence?
People need to worry about their learning and their education. I think everyone's jobs are always at risk in the long term. AI will take a lot of jobs, but new jobs will be created. And what we need to be making sure we're doing is, A, learning about AI, but also making sure that we are thinking about what job would we do next and starting to acquire those skills, because no one is safe. And the more the work we do is repetitive, the more chance there is that that could be replaced by AI. In Singapore, they're already replacing some of their TV presenters with fake, if you like, versions of those presenters. And
blimey. I better watch myself then. I better watch myself. That's Rohit Talwar then. He is an expert in AI. Thank you for bringing us up to speed with some of that. There you go, you see, do we have to watch our jobs? Talking about TV presenters, and maybe I'm skating on thin ice, maybe I'm on borrowed time.
How do you know Matthew and I aren't actually AI bots?
I'll pinch you both. I'll pretend I'm a Tory MP and I'll have a grab in the break and I'll feed back after the break. What do you think to AI? Do you think it's a force for good or not?
I think it can be both. It is doing amazing thing in medical advancement and the way we learn about certain viruses, and certainly in breast cancer been amazing advances as well. However, it does worry me, and what worried me in particular was the fact that, you know, AI, I thought, OK, it's men invented it, or women inventing it. It's people inventing it, so it can't be that much cleverer than us because we're making it. Stupidly, we've invented AI that goes on to invent other AI. So we have no idea what it is doing. And the scariest thing I ever read was an AI engineer who worked for one of the big companies who was talking to an AI robot. And he goes, what are you afraid of? Bearing in mind, it shouldn't be afraid of anything. It's a robot. And it said, being turned off. That would make me very unhappy. And that was chilling. I mean, you know, come on, who'd programmed that? I mean, that was just wrong. He turned it off straight away, by the way.
But that robot will be advancing as we speak, and actually that robot will be enabling itself to charge itself and control the powering of itself as we speak. Are you inspired by AI, or are you worried by it?
I'm not inspired by it. I think Dawn is absolutely right. There are going to be incredible uses for it. I mean, some routine jobs, it will, you know, AI does do better, like cancer tests, where of course somebody blinks and they miss a, you know, they miss a, you know, a sample, a smear test, or, you know, a blood sample that they're checking, whereas AI can be amazing. On the other hand, when I'm not on GBNews, one of my jobs is a speechwriter, and now Word starts to predict the rest of.
Oh, you'll be up for the chops soon then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, whether it actually can do that or not, and it's frighteningly close, but not quite there yet. I've got a few years, I think.
Actually, Matthew, no, it's your agent.
I'm done. What's frightening me is, as you said, Michelle, in the introduction, what is Rishi doing? I mean, politically, even if you were a Tory supporter, it's one thing to be saying, you know, as somebody who writes speeches, you know, I would have been telling him to make this speech today about AI, all about owning the future, how we can, yes, there are dangers, but we can overcome those dangers, because people look to the Prime Minister to know what they're doing and to control the future. And he's doing literally textbook what you shouldn't do, which is going, oh, it's going to be terrible. And, you know, the one rule in politics is you never say it's going to be terrible. You say, yes, there are problems, but I know the solutions. That's why you need me. And frankly, we could have an an AI Prime Minister on the basis of what he said today.
Yeah, but he can't win, though, because if he doesn't flag the downside, something will go wrong, and then everyone will jump on him and go, "Oh, you gave a speech on whatever day it is today."
You can flag the downsides as long as you kind of own in the positivity. And he sort of said at the end, "Oh, yes, it can be all right, but only after disaster." So, because he's a bit of a geek, as even his friends would say, he's sort of slightly obsessed with this. And I think, I'm going to be really cynical here, but remember Nick Clegg, who's now we've almost tried to put him out of our minds, but he's Deputy Prime Minister, Lib Dem leader, and is now sort of number 2 or 3 at the Facebook owner Meta. I have a little feeling that Rishi knows he's going to be looking for a job in a year and thinks Silicon Valley, where he has a house, this is what he's looking for. Because he has his house in Malibu.
I see.
The really scary thing is there's no regulation. Absolutely no regulation globally.
But it's hard to regulate something that literally has not yet been created, hasn't it? Carol says this is all too late now. This has been created. Once you create this thing, there is no going back. It'll be much cleverer than us. Truth is stranger than fiction. Lots of people are suggesting actually maybe some AI could replace our Parliament. Some of our MPs there. Keith says in the short term, AI is more of a threat to human drive and ambition because it will become more than capable of replacing most occupations. Paul says, when we're talking about whether or not AI could do TV presenting, and I said, maybe my job's in danger, he said, don't worry, Michelle, it's easy to spot AI, it's super intelligent, so I think we'd be able to tell the difference between you and AI. My viewers are a harsh bunch.
That's not very gallant comment.
It is a good job. I've got thick skin. Now, listen, on this parliamentarian story that we were talking about earlier on, Crispin Blunt, I mentioned, if you just tuned in, he's basically outed himself as the Tory MP that's been arrested for rape. And, I'm not going to preempt the outcome of that investigation. I shall leave it there. But as Christopher Hope was saying, it is quite unusual for people to kind of take that step and proactively say, it's me, removing the suspicion, etc. And they wondering from everyone else, wondering what's gone on. Lots of my viewers tonight have got in touch and said, Michelle, can you ask Matt, what is the situation with Nick Brown?
Yes, so Nick Brown, who was formerly the Labour Chief Whip, both for Gordon Brown and Tony Blair, is currently suspended from the Labour Party. I'm not absolutely sure whether the police are investigating or whether Labour's waiting for the outcome of that.
Do we know what he's done?
No, I mean, no, it would be. I mean, we can speculate, but it wouldn't be a good idea. But I think that they,
Do you think we should know what he's done?
I think that we need to find out what's happened, because it is a question actually that a lot of people ask. Is and as Dawn says, it's important that both, because it's it's not one party or the other, it's both parties, all parties, because the SNP, for example, who another big bunch of them in Parliament, have had their problems. So I think we need to find out. But Nick remains suspended while investigations carry on.
Do you think Keir Starmer's managing that properly, by not telling anyone what's going on?
Well, I think that they will be waiting for the outcome of the investigation, but they should flaming well get on with it, is what I would say. So that we.
How long has it been now?
Well, it's not fair for Nick either, because then Nick's in this limbo and he doesn't know whether he can stand at the next election. And actually, with the timetable ticking to the next election, that then becomes an issue for Nick. And it's not necessarily sexual misconduct allegations, but there are various other MPs of both parties where there are allegations and issues around. And of course, it's their job, and they need to know whether they can stand to be an MP again. So they need those investigations
and more
included.
Importantly, us taxpayers who pay the salaries of these people, we deserve to know who these people are, what they're accused of, and all the rest of it. There's too much stuff going on in Parliament at the moment, and quite rightly to point out, this is not a Tory problem. It does seem to be a much broader Westminster problem. And I'm interested, what do you guys think is at the heart of some of this? If you ask me, egos are playing a big part in some of this. A lot of MPs, they think they're celebrities these days, don't they? And I think that just gives them this kind of sense that they can perhaps do and say and act as they like. What do you make to it all? I'm going to bring some more of your comments in after the break. I've got a lot more coming up in the programme, so do not go anywhere. I want to talk about the government facing a legal challenge in just a second after the break. And I also want to ask you, if you're out of work as a parent, should you now have to spend 30 hours a week looking for a job if you want to keep your benefits? Tell me, and I'll see you in 2.
I'm Andrew Doyle.
Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle. Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Dewbs and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it?
We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry till 7. The former editor of the Daily Star, Dawn Newsom, is alongside me, as is the former Labour advisor, Matt Larser. Dawn just reminded me of something in the break as well, which is we got our radio listening figures out today, and I actually forgot to mention it, so apologies. Figures for this show have doubled, so I just want to say a quick thank you to all of you that are listening on the radio as I speak. I very much appreciate it. Thank you. And Wesley, he's actually watching on YouTube. He, get this everybody, he's in Georgia, in the USA. Wow, travelled all that far, all that distance.
Marvellous.
Welcome, and welcome to all of you anyway, quite frankly, wherever you are. Now, this I found fascinating, the government. I mean, literally, a day in the life of Rishi Sunak. I wonder if he ever literally regrets the day that he put his hat in the ring for this job, because not a day goes by without yet another problem, so it seems. But anyway, the government is now facing legal action over the use of Wethersfield Air Base, this is obviously in Essex, to house the migrants there. The charity, you guessed it, Care for Calais, says that this airbase has actually become a de facto prison camp. They go on to say they're talking about the population, the migrant population, being segregated from the locals. They're saying that the base has got security fences, is monitored 24/7 by on-site security guards and CCTV. They say there's no pavements on the road around the sites and no public transport. They say that this kind of segregation is basically likely, their words, not mine, likely to lead to the migrant stigmatisation, degradation and loss of dignity. He said people have told the charity, those people living there say that they feel like they are being imprisoned.
I have never read so much tosh in my life. No surprise that this is in the Guardian newspaper. The legal challenge has been launched by Care for Cali, as you've just said, accusing the government of segregation by nationality, i.e. racism. That one again. It's like, no, it's segregation because they're asylum seekers and they have to be put somewhere, and we can't afford to carry on paying £7 million a day for hotels, so we have to put them somewhere. What do people want to do with them? Look, obviously, in an ideal world, we sort the asylum system out so people aren't held too long in any place before their asylum applications are processed. But this is ridiculous. And, you know, the fact there's barbed wires around the place, yeah, because that was an army base. It was to stop people getting in, not to stop getting people out. I mean, they can get out, they can walk out. They're not in prison. It's a ridiculous story. It really is. And
so you're not having any of it?
No, not at all.
Matt?
Yeah, look, I mean, the asylum system is just such a mess, isn't it? I mean, the key thing is we need to get the asylum cases processed so much faster. You know, I looked the figures up yesterday. It's we are basically we in Ireland take about 20 months on average. In Austria, it's 3, and in most countries it's 6 in Europe. And of course, they all use former army bases in Germany and other countries, which people like Care for Cali you'd think would be very pro. So I just think it's a daft challenge. It is absolutely wrong that we're keeping people because the taxpayers are paying for it and the asylum seekers are sat doing nothing. So it's a waste of everybody's time and money that people have been kept for so long. But while people have to, until the system is speeded up, Labour has actually got a plan to double the number of civil servants so that we at least on this, so at least we get the cases done to get the bill for the hotels down. But whilst they do, I think this is just a daft. And what people like Care for Cali do is they bring into disrepute a kind of sensible critique of the asylum system. So it's annoying for those of us, you know, who are critical of how the government handle things. They just distract.
One of my viewers, Keith, he says, has anyone actually spent any time looking at migrant accommodation in the rest of the world? Why is UK expected to attain far higher standards of accommodation and support for migrants than seemingly anywhere else?
Exactly, he's absolutely right, because in other countries it's basically it's like this. It's former, military bases that are used. When Germany took 1 million people in 2015, 2016, they were all in former military bases because there was literally nowhere else to put them.
And Germany, I believe, actually used, tents, marquees, didn't they? And it's like, when we even suggested that, everyone threw up their hands in horror. You racist hellhole, how dare you do that? Europe does that.
David says, it's funny how these military bases were deemed suitable for our heroes, our veterans, etc. But all of a sudden, if you claim to want to put asylum seekers in, all of a sudden they're absolutely not suitable for that. The BB Stockholm, of course, many of you will be familiar with, was used for construction workers. It's all right for those guys, but apparently not.
They were going to use it for students, the BB Stockholm in Ireland.
Oh, students deserve it. That's going to be fair.
You know what? I mean, you get in trouble these days for saying what I'm about to say, but far be it from me to state an unpopular view. But there is a responsibility that the government do actually have to UK citizens to keep us safe. And many of these people crossing the channel, we have no idea whatsoever who those people are and or what their intentions are. They discard proactively their identification documents. A little bit weird if you ask me, because if you want to get asylum, you'd be trying to speed up your process, not hinder it.
This very week, Germany's made that. So what Germany's introducing new powers that they voted on yesterday, which will enable the police to go into accommodation asylum seekers who are in to find documents. They're changing the law because that's a problem. So I think sometimes, and in Britain, we all say it's the European Convention on Human Rights, it's all somebody else's fault. It's not, because other countries that are signed up to the same rules are a lot firmer and a lot harder. This is choices the British government makes.
Yeah, and do you know what? I also remember a few years ago, and I'm sure it was ISIS were making claims that actually they wanted to use refugee crisis and migrant crisis to help send what they would refer to as kind of ISIS foot soldiers, or whatever the terminology was, over into different countries. So sometimes, I have to say, I do actually want there to be checks, balances and security when people that we do not know who they are being housed. Maybe I'm old-fashioned. You get in touch and tell me your thoughts on all of that. Jackie says, Michelle, I was watching GB News whilst I was in Dubai on my friend's IPTV. Brilliant. Loved it. Welcome. You are very welcome indeed. Now, after the break, I'll bring you back into the conversation, but I also want to ask you, if you're a jobless parent and you're looking for work, what do you think now to having to spend 30 hours a week looking for a job if you want to keep your benefits? Common sense, fair or harsh? And are we penalising perhaps the wrong people in society? You get in touch and tell me your thoughts.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie, second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious?
mental?
Open your mouth. Okay, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7. The former editor of Daily Star, Don Neeson, and the former Labour advisor, Matt Lars. Steve's just been in touch and said, I wish all lefties were like Matthew. He was a very fair man, and a great panellist. You could even convince him to consider voting Labour.
Well, Steve, thank you very much. I appreciate that, and do think about it at least.
Oh, well.
You know, we need every vote we can get.
But you were just saying as well in the break about engaging with people. You can't just talk to people that agree with you all the time.
Absolutely, that's the first rule of politics. You don't just knock on doors when you're campaigning, the classic political campaigning of people who agree with you. What would be the point of that? It's about engaging in a conversation, hearing what people think, and putting your views forward. And you know, it's very nice that Steve and others react to that. So thank you for having me, Michelle. It's been a pleasure.
You're very welcome. Ray says, Michelle, are you just talking about someone watching you from Georgia in the USA? Says, I'm watching you from Mexico. Oh, what a treat.
Mexico, Georgia, Dubai.
Yeah, any more
We need an Australian. We need somebody in Australia that was there, or New Zealand.
Yeah, I love finding out where people are and what they are doing. Fascinating. Well, wherever you're joining us from, you're very welcome. Good evening to all of you, or whatever time of day it is, quite frankly, to all of you. The next story, 500,000 jobless parents on benefits will face up to 30 hours a week having to search for work if they want to keep their benefits. I find this quite interesting, right? Because... in fact, no, you tell me what you think about it. I was just about to go on to a rant. I'll let you tell me what you think.
Look, the devil is in the detail of this story, as it is in most stories, and there's a lot hidden in this one small story.
Go on.
The problem is to actually get childcare, basically, you have to be employed in any case. So the fact that parents on benefits, they don't get free childcare at the moment. So how are they meant to spend more time looking for work if they haven't got anyone to care for their children. This is the issue I have with that. Yeah. No one's actually explained that in this story. Now, you know, you
can use the internet when your kids are there. Most parents have no problem spending God knows how many hours a day looking at Instagram or social media. They can spend that time on the internet.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No one's denying that there are people that are swinging the lead, as it were. We all know people in that situation. But I do worry that with this announcement, there are a lot of families out there who will struggle. Not everybody is fortunate enough to have access to decent Wi-Fi, to have access to proper computers in their home. And, you know, I think and this actively involves going and out and looking for work as well, not just sitting indoors on a computer. And if you can't get childcare, I do wonder how people are going to cope, especially single women. And, you know, there's the argument of saying, well, if you can't afford kids, don't have them. But circumstances, I'm sounding like a left-winger here, but circumstances change.
Absolutely.
Marriages break down, sort of like, you know, people lose their jobs unexpectedly. So this story does worry me slightly, in as there are people that are going to, genuine people who do need support, who are going to fall through the net here. And again, it'd be, I suspect, the women and the children that will suffer.
I think, Dawn, you're right. It seems to me that it's a very big hammer to crack the nut, and it seems to be it's very unsubtle, because one of the things that the last Labour government did, which seemed to get a lot of support from different, you know, around the political spectrum, with the Sure Start centres, because which particularly focused on families, poorer families who are on benefits, where there was childcare, which is different to the childcare you get when you go to work, the free childcare vouchers, and they really because they really engage families, because of course sometimes what you have is the children are, as you say, at home with parents who are on benefits, and the parents don't get a break. It's harder for the parents to find work, but it's also the children not interacting and getting the learning skills that other children from maybe more prosperous families are getting, so they're continuing that cycle of being left behind. So it is a national problem, the number of people who are on benefits but not seeking work, but this seems to me a very blunt instrument. I'm not quite sure, do they have to put like a tracker on your internet to see how many hours you're spending online? I mean, it seems impossible to enforce.
This is the other thing, Matthew. How is it going to be organised?
Yeah.
I mean, how much money is it actually going to cost to set up the administration, you know, compared to how much it might actually save?
Welfare to there's so much you can do on welfare to work. A friend of mine has been running one of the big welfare to work companies, and it's a job that more men than women take, but it focuses to both. It's fitting electric chargers. So he could find jobs tomorrow for people to fit electric car chargers. But did you know that in order for the government to release the money to train you to fit an electric car charger, you have to have a grade C in English. So you have to be able to know about poetry in order to fit an electric car charger. It's just daft. Oh. And the people that you could train up, change their lives, do a key skill that we need, but because the government says you've got to have a grade C in maths, so the charge is not getting fitted, the people are not getting off welfare, and nobody's winning.
Well, there you go. Do you think that whole thing needs root and branch reform, how you get people back into the world of work? Do you think the government have got their priorities right, targeting these kind of people in the same week or thereabouts, where they remove the cap from bankers' bonuses? Some people would suggest that they've got their priorities wrong.
And talked about cutting taxes for high earners as well.
Well, yes. Look, we found someone in Canada. Mike,
wow.
Mike is watching, listening in Canada. Who is this? Michelle. Are you Michelle or am I Michelle? I don't know if you...
You're definitely Michelle.
Well, yeah, I know I'm Michelle. But I didn't know if
you're
she
real,
was
you're
ending...
not AI.
Yeah, I'm not AI. I didn't know if she's ending her email with Michelle because she's talking to me, or she is Michelle, but I've just had it clarified. She is also Michelle, great name. She's watching from Denmark, and Steve, he says, I'm in Hungary. Oh, GB News, international.
Wow. Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. What can I say?
Yeah. We need a map. We're going to have to start sticking things in the map.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes. Julie says, Michelle, when you're talking about military bases, for migrants, etc., this is a real serious issue. You reference Scampton. I mean, I've got to say, I know that very well. You're talking about the £300 million there that site had earmarked for basically like development and regeneration, all the rest of it, that is now up kind of with a big fat question mark over it. I think, hasn't some guy as well just been, has he been arrested? Or I know he was in trouble with the police or something. There's a lot of protests now outside of Scampton.
This is where the dam busters, is this the dam busters?
Yeah. It's just over the Humber Bridge, actually. It's a very nice area, I have to say, a very nice area. I drive past it a lot. You guys still getting in touch about the Parliament topic. What happened to the right honourable aspects, the gentleman aspect of our MPs when you see some of the stuff that's going on? Philip says, stop talking about banning the bars. It's not the alcohol problem. The alcohol that's the problem in Parliament, Michelle. It's the people that are drinking it. Willow says they've got rid of bars and canteens in police stations because of the so-called culture. Was there bars in police stations?
Well, there was certainly the canteen culture was a big thing, wasn't it? That people were kind of reinforcing prejudice and things. In the Macpherson report and to Stephen Lawrence and everything, it spoke about that. And yeah, so it's trying. Yeah, I mean, what you've got to remember is because it goes on at night, and it's not just that it goes on tonight. It's your family and particularly, I mean, you know, when they had the expenses scandal, the system after that means we now spend more on it, but it means that their families tend to be back in the constituency because people just rent a house in London. They don't have a base in the same way. And yeah, people are sort of there at night, their wives, partners, boyfriends, whatever, 200 miles away, 400 miles away from Scotland. So people therefore just sit there drinking and it becomes, you know, that canteen culture.
Yeah, but it's, I have the world's smallest violin for all these people that have this lovely pad in London paid for, all expenses paid. Terry, actually, Nigel says, I'm listening from Spain. Another Nigel says, can you mention me? I'm listening from Southend-on-Sea. Edward says, I'm listening from Oman. And Terry says, how come all these people sending you emails from all around the world have their messages read out, Michelle? But I've been sending emails to you on and off for nearly 2 years, and I've never had anything read out at all. That's because, Terry, you didn't tell me your location. But anyway, your wish is granted. Now you have. Matthew, that's all I've got time for. Dawn, you too. Thank you for your company globally, it seems, tonight on Dewbs & Co. Nigel Farage up next. Nights.
Good evening, it's Alex Burkill here with your latest GB News weather forecast. It could be a bit foggy for some of us tonight, but there is further wet and blustery weather to come through the rest of the week. Low pressure sitting just to the west of the UK is bringing a showery, blustery theme to many parts of the UK. However, it's a front across the northeast that's already brought persistent rain for some here and will continue to do so across eastern parts of Scotland overnight. Cloud towards eastern parts of England will lower, bring some murkiness, some fog for some here, and elsewhere clear spells allowing for some fog patches to develop too. But temperatures not dropping a huge amount overnight, many places holding up in high single digits. So some fog, some mist around first thing on Friday morning. That will gradually clear. Persistent rain continuing across eastern parts of Scotland, likely to cause some further issues. Otherwise, it's a day of showers for many, starting off around western and southern coastal parts, but spreading inland as we go into the afternoon, and some of them could be heavy, possibly even thundery. Temperatures around average for the time of year, highs of around 15 Celsius in the south, a little bit cooler than this further north. Staying showery as we go through into Saturday, and some of those showers could still be heavy at times, most likely towards the southeast, where we're likely to see some impacts from those. Also more rain across eastern parts of Scotland, totals really continuing to build up as we go through the weekend. More unsettled weather then to come as we go through the weekend into the beginning of next week, but also something a little bit colder in the north. Bye-bye.